It's your Catholic Drive Time
with Joe McLean and Emily Alcaraz.
Joining us by Zoom right now is Kevin Wells. He works with the World Villages for Children. He's got a book out with Sophia Institute Press about the priests we need to save the church. And I think he's got a new project out with Ignatius. But Kevin, good morning to you. Thanks for being a part of our program.
Joe, it's awesome to be with you. Thanks for inviting me in.
Yeah, praise be to Jesus. Now, you're in the Maryland area. Is that correct?
I am. I'm outside of Annapolis, not too far from D.C.
So it's, 40 below there, 8 feet of snow. What's the weather like today?
Actually, it's kind of mild this winter. Like everything else, it's nuts. Yeah. So it's, I went for a walk this morning. It was like 45 degrees. It was pleasant.
It's nice. Yeah, praise God. It does get chilly there, though. I mean, by February, you're freezing pretty much.
Yeah, without question. So it's coming. Matter of fact, it's supposed to snow this weekend.
It's coming. I like that. It's great. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming by 1 million plus rally person there tomorrow, I think. So it's coming big. But at any rate, let's talk about, let's start with the book first. It's Sophia Institute Press, The Priest We Need to Save the Church. Tell us about this book and what inspired you to write it. What is the takeaway, the core message here?
Well, I was just listening to Emily's news report. It kind of speaks to the to the heresy of modernism. Yeah, it's deplorable where we've allowed this unbridled church to sort of, it's out of the barn, and German bishops are saying one thing, and over here in California, a priest is doing this thing, and it really is it's in a certain sense, it's an abomination because Christ spoke the church into Peter's ear 2,000 years ago. It's been handed forward as deposits of faith. We know it to be glorious and radiant. And it seemed to me anyway, what led up to the book, to answer your question, Joe, is over and over and over again, I saw from behind the ambo, whether it was a contraception of truth, where priests just kind of masked the prophetic voice. Without the voice, there's no life in the void, and there's death. And we've seen what's happened to the church. I think that too many bishops and priests I've seen, my humble opinion, not to get on my microscopic soapbox here, but they've covered up the royalty of what Christ intended his Catholic Church to be. So after a while, after 7-8 years of discernment, I said, you know what? I'm going to plead to priests and to bishops of what I thirst for. So I put it down in book form.
I like that you started the book with the story of your uncle and how your uncle, tried to be a priest that served, a priest that poured himself out and lost his life tragically to a street person. Maybe you can give us the elevator version of your uncle's story.
Simple as this. He is arguably one of the strongest priests in the history of Washington, D.C., because he was unafraid to use the prophetic voice. He was actually sort of a troubleshooter by the cardinal at the time. If a parish was suffering, they would move my uncle, Monsignor Wells, from parish to parish to parish. So he just had made literally thousands of friends, not because he was he was a very fun, nice guy, but because he was unafraid to show, to really oblige the burden of his identity to lead souls to heaven. So whereas a priest's identity is to save souls, he saved generations of souls.
Wow. And there was a strange situation where someone came in and brutally murdered him. You said there was really no conclusion to that. There was no reason why. There was no motive, right?
No, actually, there is a motive, and it's what I did not include in the book. And Joe, we'll be candid here. One of the great problems we're having in the church today is the sin of priestly homosexuality and what's going on in rectories. And we know from the former Cardinal McCarrick. So 3 of the prior priests in his rectory, where he was moved to by the cardinal to stamp it out, were homosexually active. 2 have been removed from ministry. A 3rd has disappeared. So a year into my uncle being at this rectory, he was murdered in the middle of the night. And many priests in this diocese will tell you that one of the strongest priests in the history of DC is no longer alive, and it is due directly to what went on in that rectory. And I'll say this, Joe, when that kind of activity is going on in a rectory for 10, 15 years, it's essentially, it's like throwing out Ouija boards, like they're Frisbees, and saying, come on in, Satan, come on in this rectory. So my uncle goes in there, and now he's no longer alive.
You know, and you said in the book about your uncle that he had stamped fear out of his life, except for fear of God, of course. And I saw that, I read that, it struck me, you know, and I put myself, and I paused myself when I read about the him being murdered, and I thought, I wonder what it was like for him to face this stranger in his rectory in the middle of the night, and a man who had, you know, stamped fear out of his life. I can imagine that that no matter what anxieties might have been welling up within his chest, a certain resignation to Christ and a peace must have prevailed over him. I can't imagine a man who stamps fear out of his life living any other way.
Yeah, you know, Joe, I've thought about that, not too often, because it was a brutal murder scene, but I have thought that it was a crucifixion that he went through. But I do think he was stabbed to death. Up until the last, you know, thrust of the knife, I do think, and I'm not going to think, I know my uncle was forgiving his murderer.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful stuff. You can get the book of Sophia Institute Press. We're linking to it on our live video feeds, by the way, facebook.com/Catholic Drive Time. It's a great place to find that. But if you go to Sophia Institute Press, you'll find it there as well. Kevin Wells is our guest. Now, you also work with an organization called World Villages for Children. Tell us about this.
It's an exceptional organization. Right now, today as we speak, more than 20,000 of the poorest of the poor are being taken care of in 17 different locations throughout the world. They're Catholic Boystowns and Girlstowns.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's Joe, it's exceptional. It's true Catholicism, not what Emily just shared about the German bishops and stuff. It was founded by Venerable Aloysius Schwartz, an American-born missionary priest who I believe. So, Joe, I read several book biographies on our greatest priest saints to lead up to the book I wrote on the priests we need to save the church. So I read about John Newman, who we were just speaking of. I read Philip Neri. I read Maximilian Kolbe. I've read Padre Pio, John Vianney. I'm going to say this: Venerable Aloysius Schwartz, who prayed not to be known. He was like Mother Teresa. What he did in 1957 in Korea, what he started to do for these orphans whose parents had died in the Korean War and went to the Philippines and to Mexico and throughout the world for these kids, is flabbergasting and has never been done in the history of the church. And he did not want to be known. And I broke the seal by writing his biography, which Ignatius is going to put out in the spring. But I contend, and I've been down there in Mexico, and I've seen what goes on with these children. 3,000 in Chalco, Mexico, girls. In Guadalajara, Mexico, 2,000 boys. It is pure, beautiful Catholicism, where they send these kids back out to their poor communities as missionaries to not only rebuild their communities for what they learned in school, but to rebuild their communities through the Catholic faith.
Wow. I'm looking on the website right now, worldvillages.org, and you've got locations in Brazil, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, the Philippines, South Korea, and Tanzania. So it's pretty cool to look at the map version of this, and you see all the little red pins there at worldvillages.org. How did you get involved in this organization to begin with?
Well, I wrote the book, The Priest We Need to Save the Church, and a good gentleman, Tom Sullivan, and his wife, Glory, said, we know who the priest we need to save the church is. His name is Venerable Aloysius Schwartz. We want you to write his biography. It's never been written. There's been attempts, but it's not worked. We would like you to write about him. So they said, you know what, we're going to hire you to write the book and to handle our marketing and public relations, et cetera. So I started to read about, I didn't know if I wanted to join the organization, but I started to read about this priest who's from my hometown. He's from DC. And I said, this guy, and Joe, I say this, I know it sounds scandalous and heretical, but I believe what he did is as powerful, if not more so, than Mother Teresa. Wow. It is remarkable what he did, because what he did was this, Joe. What he did was this, where Mother Teresa sort of gathered up the dying man on the street in the gutters and said, I will allow you to die with dignity. I will love you to the end. Father Al said, He looked at the child on the ground at 9 years old who was being ignored by everyone and dying in the streets and says, I will take you in and I will make sure that you are not that man that Mother Teresa picks up. You are the man that will rebuild the world as an engineer, an architect, an orchestral musician. I will make you a priest, whatever. I will take care of you and build you. So he built these humble kingdoms, these orphanages throughout the world. And now these very orphans today, even today, are today's future priests and future nuns.
Wow. I mean, I'm sorry for Father Al, but I'm really glad to hear about that. I think right now, especially, we need edifying stories of priests who are heroic. And Kevin, what did Father Aloysius and your uncle have in common? What is it that makes these priests lead selfless lives?
That's a great question. So well, they're both from D.C. We'll start from that. But I'll say this. That's a great question, Emily. I think what they had in common was they had a self-amputation of their will. They knew that they could not be comfortable, because if they were comfortable, they couldn't do the magnitude of the work in saving souls. So essentially, Father Al lived in a shack for 5 years.
Wow.
No heat, no water, no plumbing, where he died to himself. So he knew he could receive the graces to serve these thousands of orphans. Tom Wells, my uncle Monsignor Wells, he was one that said, okay, I came out of the birth canal with a guy who had zeal for the Lord, but I can't get comfortable. I can't sort of, go to the Redskins game, go to the tailgate afterwards and have a steak dinner. I need to feed the flock. So he worked like Father Al. He worked 14, 16-hour days every day, heard countless confessions, did a daily holy hour, celebrated Mass every single day of their lives, prayed the rosary every day, because they knew they had to receive to give. So I think that's it. Father Al and my uncle received so they could give.
When did Venerable Aloysius pass?
He died too soon in 1992 from Lou Gehrig's disease.
Wow.
If he died at the age of 62, if he had lived another 20 years, 30 years, he should still be alive. I think this year he should be 90 years old. The whole world would know about him for what he's done. He really is. I'll say this, Emily and Joe, what he's doing is he's rebuilding. And I say this because I've been to Mexico, I've been to Guadalajara, I've seen what's taking place down there. He's rebuilding the Catholic Church throughout the world, because these Sisters of Mary's nuns, there's 380 of them, the order that he founded, they are catechizing these kids with the true Catholic faith and sending them out after 5 years of education. I mean, some of these kids become professional soccer players. They become executives at IBM. They're big. They come out strong, not only intellectually, but spiritually. So they're rebuilding the Catholic Church.
Can you give us a description of the actual villages themselves? You said there was Boystowns and Girlstowns. I went to a high school right across the street was a boys' town, and for the longest time, I didn't know what that place was. So give us, what are these places like, and what's the quality of living? Just give us the details of each of or just overall of the villages.
Joe, great question. So Father Al knew that these kids lived in trash piles, in garbage dumps, poorest of the poor, no food, nothing. That's where they came from. So he takes these kids in at the age of 12. The sisters take them in now, and they say, you will be treated with dignity, respect, and you'll be giving the things that a normal kid would have. So if you walk into one of these, you'll see soccer fields, you'll see basketball courts, you'll see swimming pools, you'll see sort of these 7-story buildings where they both live and are educated. So it's actually, they're kind of beautiful, nice flowers. The sisters love the flowers and the plants. It's kind of like a humble kingdom of Catholicism. It's not a Walt Disney World with glitz and glamour. It's kind of plain, but it's ordered. And I think that's what Father Al wanted. Everything has order and symmetry. And I think Father Al knew our world is disordered to a certain degree. He wanted kids to have order.
And during this Christmas season, of course, we're reflecting on the humble lifestyle of the Holy Family. And I think that sounds like this really reflects that humility. Now, I also wanted to ask Kevin, it's all well and good for us, the lay people, to say we need holy priests, priests do better. But I read the headlines every day, and I report on stories where many priests now are taking their own lives because this is a difficult and lonely time for our priests. So what can we do to support our priests and foster vocations as well?
That's a great question. So I think, well, tonight I'm going to have dinner with 2 priests. So that's one thing that we do is we invite them over to the house, or hey, Father, what do you need? What's not happening at your parish? Are you having problems getting people to park? Are you having problem with leading catechesis? What classes no one? Give it to me. How can I help you? So we go straight to the heart of what Father needs, what Father wants. Obviously, every day if we're not doing this, we're not in the game. We pray for our pastor. We pray for our associates. Now, I will say this, Emily. If we feel like, and I will encourage your listeners, if we feel like that our pastor is straitjacketing truth, or they're being timid or reluctant, especially in this day and age, as I think bishops were and priests were, many of them, for the 6 months up to the election, not speaking about one candidate's thoughts on abortion, gender, and sexuality, then we need to encourage priests candidly off to the side. Father, I see greatness in you. But I tell you what, you're not preaching truth. And I see it in you. And I pray for you. You know I love you. But I'm encouraging you now. Until you display holiness for me, by your boldness, by your prophetic voice, in a certain sense, I can't be that way in the world or in my family. So, Father, please lead me to holiness. So we encourage priests that way too.
You know, I think this is a point that gets lost. We only have about 5 minutes left in our conversation with Kevin Wells, but I think it's a valid point here to pause on just for a moment. In a divided world, in a deeply divided church body even, where everything is divided by politics rather than by faith, I like the fact that we have this combination in you, Kevin. I want to adhere to the teaching of the church, and all of that means socially, economically, physically, spiritually, all the rest. And then also I want to go help orphans in foreign countries. It's usually we get accused of being one or the other, but no, it's both and, right? We are to adhere to the faith and all of its implications, and then go and help our neighbor. And I love that combination of those two things, and we're seeing that in this organization, World Villages for Children. So I just wanted to highlight that for a moment. The other thing I want to say, 4 minutes on the clock, is it must not be inexpensive to run so many beautiful locations around the world for these children. How are their finances managed?
Wow. Well, no, it takes really many millions of dollars every year, because you're taking care of 22,000 children as we speak all over the world. So it's due to generous benefactors. It's due to donors. It's due to, you know what, Joe? I think more and more Catholics, and again, it's time to be candid, I think, in Catholicism, are realizing, you know what, should I keep giving money to the Cardinal's Appeal or the Bishop's Appeal? I don't know. Maybe I should start looking to Catholic organizations that are building up the true Catholic Church. Oh, worldvillages.org. They have 380 sisters that work 16 hours a day, that grind and grind and grind to build these kids up into saints. Maybe I should start giving to them. And I'll say this, Joe, the most beautiful divine paradox takes place at all these Boystowns and Girlstowns. These sisters know that these kids come in having, many of them plowing fields at the age of 8 or 9 with no meal on the table at night, or many kids were physically, emotionally, sexually abused. They come in staggering with wounds. And these sisters say, it's almost like these sisters greet these kids like a mother does his son coming home from war. They grab hold and say, I will take your cross until it's gone. So it's a divine paradox where the kid's cross is taken off their shoulder, and the sister takes it and says, now you live, and I will lead you to the heart of Jesus Christ and the Catholic faith, and I will show you the joy that you did not have. So I am here for you in sort of as Jesus Christ was for the suffering, the lepers, and the poor. That's what the sisters are doing. And I think that's what people that want to donate to a worthy organization would be wise to donate to worldvillages.org, because it truly is, take my word for it, I've been there, it is Catholic to the bone. It is Jesus Christ to the bone, and it is Marian. When you see the sisters, it is Marian.
Yeah, we have about 2 minutes on the clock, but I had a question for you, 2 questions really. One, how many vocations come from these communities to religious life, priesthood, and that such thing? And second question being, this sounds like what the Catholic culture used to be, where it's just you're forming good Catholic people to go out into the world, live in the secular world, but live it Catholic. Could you speak on that, on those 2 things?
Yeah, Adrian, you'll hear a wild statistic I'm about to give you, but it's true. 85% of the Sisters of Mary today are graduates of the programs, which means which means they say, I want to be what I experienced for 5 years.
Praise God.
So to answer your question, many sisters come out of these programs, and a priest is there right now, Father Dan Leary, who is now going after priests. So there's several priests, but he wants more and more priests. So the answer is hundreds of sisters and priests are going into the world and joining vocations.
Well, we've been talking with Kevin Wells about his book at Sophia Institute Press, The Priests We Need to Save the Church, and his work at World Villages is it Children? World Village. Let me get to the website, worldvillages.org. World Villages for Children is the organization. Kevin, thanks for being on our program, and I think your book on the Venerable Aloysius will come out in the spring with Ignatius Press. Is that true?
That's right, Joe.
All right, so we can look forward to that, and maybe we'll have you back when the book comes out. We'll follow up our conversation. Kevin Wells, God bless you. Thanks for being on the program today.
Thank you, Joe. God bless you.
May God richly bless you.
Thank you for joining us on Your Catholic Drive Time, where it is our pleasure to keep you informed and inspired.
Join us Monday through Friday at the same time, right here on your favorite Catholic radio station.
Don't forget to connect with us. Just go to facebook.com/Catholic Drive Time.
Again, that's facebook.com/Catholic Drive Time.
Be sure to share more than just us today. Share Jesus with everyone you meet.
Bye now, and God love you.